Good morning. I'm Sally Hanley. Welcome to Mystery Book Club. We are discussing, this is the last book of the quarter for this year, and Judy Buch is our moderator. It's her book, Envy to Death, that we are discussing today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this book over to, or this meeting over to Judy Buch. Judy.
Thank you, Sally. It's great to do these moderations for the different books, and we've had two previously good books that I've enjoyed very much. And so the tricky thing, John, you know this because you did this, and Sally, when you do your own book, there's just a little bit more, I'm not sure, what if they don't like it, that kind of thing. But not really to scare us away, but to enjoy it. So just a real fast cap. This book takes place in South Carolina in a fictitious town. Two friends, the one, Estine, her sister, is killed at the door. And it goes through their amateur detectives. There is a detective, of course, in the book. And there's a love story, but there are two different types of love stories going on in the book. And it's a thriller, suspense, murder mystery. So that's basically the cap of it. And not sure how many of you were able to read it, but that gives you something anyway. So I guess we can just start with the plot. What did you think of the plot? Were there anything in the plot as it moved through? I didn't read that. It came and went too fast. Anybody have any comments about the plot itself?
With a lot of things going on, it kept you interesting. And
It's hard to hear you, Ellis.
Yeah, Ellis, can you turn your microphone up maybe?
let me see. I'm using a different keyboard than my usual one, and I have to find everything.
Okay, getting that close is
How
better.
about that? Is
Mm,
that okay?
if you lean closer, we can hear you. Yeah.
Well, I was saying I liked the plot. I thought you did well with it. There was a lot going on, a lot happening that kept your attention in it. I thought the plot, actually read this probably when you first put it out, but I didn't remember any of the details. So it was good to read it again.
I liked the plot also. I thought it was very well done. Had me going. I didn't know which way to turn or look to try and figure out who the heck the murderer was, which became clear obviously in the end. But I liked the journey getting to that point. You did throw a couple little cookies out there about HB and that, which kind of sparked my interest because at first I couldn't really figure out what it had to do with the book. But as we went along, it became clear. So I liked it. I liked the way it was handled.
Thank you, John.
Thought it was very good.
Some books are hard to write, and this one, it seemed to fall into place. Like the more I got into it, the more it just seemed to be a domino thing. Some books I really labor over. This one was kind of a fun write. I enjoyed writing about Callie, especially Callie and Estine. When you write a book, there is a wonderful quote, and I'm going to give it to you since many of you are authors. But it says that when we talk about characters now, I'm switching to characters from plot. And this author was a professor of theater at William and Mary. His name was Louis Catron, I believe is how you say it. And he said, characters are built on pieces of memory, sections from relatives, traits of enemies, hopes and failures the inner self holds secret, fantasies and daydreams. These little pieces are welded by the imagination into one coherent entity. and often the process is helped by a mystic self-determination of the part of the character who participates in the creation of itself. I think that's brilliant. And it certainly does. I think for all of you who are authors, you do find that you could probably agree with that. I am assuming that, but it is so true for me that it is a part of things. So when people ask you, where did you get that character? Where did you get the idea for that character? That's how it happens. Little bits of this, little bits of that, and then it takes on its own course. So what did you think of Callie and Estine?
Callie was really well developed, and she was very humorous at times. And but I have to say, there were moments when I wanted to slap her. Okay, so
Yeah.
right for the moment that stands out most to me is when she gave Estine's address to this woman she didn't even know. And I thought, she's always the one suspicious of the guy with the baseball cap, and she's always on the lookout. And then she does the dumbest thing of all. Um, but
Yeah.
but she was very humorous. And she was very, very well drawn, because I could just imagine. I've known people like this, they're just hapless. I think that's a good word
Yeah.
to describe her. Estine, on the other hand, she got on my nerves a few times too. For example, when Callie got so angry that she didn't let the dogs out, or she didn't pay attention to the dogs. And then she would just say, well, all you had to do was ask. Now, I have to tell you, there's nothing that annoys me more than that. Being a person who always jumps in and volunteers, nothing irks me more than the person who says, all you had to do was ask. Because then when you ask them twice, they tell you what a nag you are. So yeah, so that annoyed me about her. But she was a difficult character to like, because she was so um, methodical almost, and machine-like in the way she approached things. But she still was, a very human character, and came out that way in the end.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because um, as you know, if a person likes or dislikes a character, that's good. If they have no emotion towards that character and could care less if it was in the story, that's bad. But yes, and that's bits and pieces. That's really not that methodical thing that um, it almost goes beyond what is we would call normal. But people on the spectrum might have a little bit of that. But there were things about Estine that I enjoyed writing. I enjoyed her, that, in the end, she's more loving towards her mom. She can show her affection to her mom a little bit better. So I loved that little bit of change in her from the beginning.
Well, towards the end, you explained a little bit about why she stifled her emotions,
Yes,
and she tried not to do anything emotional.
right. She blamed herself for her brother's death. Um, and that, I think she was probably like that before that happened, but in her personality was probably towards that with her. She had a bit of ESP, she kind of read people as well. But I lived with somebody on the spectrum, and I know how they can be one way, and then they can be the other way. My brother was like that. He can be very, if he's thinking about you, he can be very concerned about you to a point. But then he can be so distracted he doesn't notice important things. So that was a help. Yeah. But I like that she a little bit.
Yeah, I liked them both also, because they were, you've pushed the characters and you push them in opposite directions. And I thought and I thought they were like, they seemed real to me. I mean, they didn't seem, people are quirky, and there are people that are quirky, and I've worked with a lot of data scientists, and I'm one of them myself, and I get in that zone and don't hear anything makes my husband so mad. I'm like, I don't hear anything when I'm working. It's like not even there. So, but I liked their interaction with each other too. I thought that the way they, pushed each other's buttons, sometimes on purpose, sometimes not. I thought that was really complex. I think I enjoyed that the most of all of it was those two characters and their relationship with each other.
That was
So I thought it was really
well
good.
done.
I
Thank you.
agree. I agree with that, Linda. It seemed to me that it borderlined on a love-hate relationship almost, because there were times Callie just drove Estine nuts, and Estine got to be a little blunt with her in telling her to stop. But then, they worked it all out and we're back at the friendship. So I thought the relationship was interesting, realistic, very
Mhm.
realistic.
I mean,
Yeah.
the other way too, where Steve moves in with her and doesn't like everything to do any grocery shopping or everything to even help her at all. And I could just see that. So it was, yeah, it was two sides. They were both, so I thought it was really good.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah.
and they knew each other since childhood, so almost was like sisters, because
Yeah.
you can fight with your sister like that, and then you
Yeah.
always make up and get over it and move on. But yeah, it was very, very much having two sisters. I identified with that piece of it.
Did you find it a quick read or was it difficult to read?
No,
I
it
found
was,
a very quick read. I started
yeah,
it, went right through it. Um, I wanted to like see what the next thing was. I thought it was a quick read.
yeah.
Because of the action,
Sure.
because things kept happening. I
Yeah.
kept
When did you
turning
get
the pages.
pulled? Pardon?
Oh, I said I kept turning the pages to see what was happening.
Did it take, how far into the book before you became hooked into the book, or if you,
Hmm.
Well, we're kind of hooked in the first chapter because you got this unexplained death, and
Mhm.
then so I mean I was hooked from the beginning. Um, and of course we read much of this in critique groups, so I kind of can't testify to like how quickly did I know who did it, because I think I might have known that quicker because I had read much of it before.
The one thing I had trouble with was chapter 22, the first flashback, or maybe the only one. First, I don't think that was Estine's chapter, it was Callie's. I think it was mislabeled. And at the end of it, I wanted something to tell me we were back in the present. I didn't realize at first that it was just that one chapter that was in the past. I would like to have said something that brought it present right away.
Not sure what chapter 22 is anymore. I can't.
Wait a minute, maybe it's
22,
no,
where
17.
Callie,
17 is the flashback.
oh, 17.
And I think
I'll check that.
and 22 is Callie's
Oh,
chapter,
17.
not Estine.
17 is the killer's chapter. That's HB.
Is that the flashback?
That's 16 days earlier, but it's not Callie. This is the woman who is the killer.
HB. And so it's 22 that was Callie's chapter and not Estine's. I had them, the two chapters numbers written
Okay,
down,
yeah,
not what they were.
okay.
But
Thank you.
I would like to have seen after the first that flashback that it brought you back. Because I
Mhm.
had to read a little bit and then go back and check.
The flashback was the whole chapter, was it not?
Yes,
Yeah,
the first
so
HB
then is,
chapter. And I think that's 17. But
mm, okay,
some books, sometimes books go back and you read the rest of it and it
yeah.
becomes the real.
Well, yes, I'll check
Yeah.
on chapter 22, but 17 was definitely the killer's chapter. So that was definitely
Yeah.
getting the killer into that. But thank you. What some of these books we get ideas for what book we want to write, and probably the influence for me for this book was the movie Fatal Attraction, which we probably have all seen. It was a classic way back when. But I was thinking about that, and since a lot of people in my family are therapists, I had a lot of go-tos for mental illness and what would make a character go off like that. So that I got help with that. So that was kind of fun to bring my family into that. My daughter's a therapist. my granddaughter's a therapist. Maybe it has something to do with me. Maybe that's why they went into it, is trying to figure out how they were raised. Did you ever think about that? You're surrounded by people.
I try not to.
I think some of my family is the other end of the spectrum. They're the patients.
I hadn't thought of that.
It was interesting, those chapters where, listening to this character go on, and the mental illness was so clear in that single-mindedness that could not be deterred. And no matter what the man said to her, the average woman would, once once the man ends it, that's it. You just move off. And that's most women, I think, would just be devastated, but they wouldn't pursue the man. Maybe one time try, but after that, and the her repeated, well, also the fact that she immediately said that they were soulmates, she immediately identified, and you knew this definitely was mental illness. These are the women that get scammed on the internet, because they fall for somebody the moment that they meet them, especially if they're nice to them, even if it's for a one-night stand. They just assume this is the beginning of something wonderful. And yeah, but in this case, this was like, so much deeper than just being blindsided by a man. She just was really deeply disturbed.
Well, especially the way she degraded herself. I thought that was very poignant and very well written in the book. She just kept going, and it was obvious, as you said, Sally, that he was not interested.
Yeah.
There were some devices that I used, some techniques that I used. I don't know if anybody got them, but one was like an analogy where Callie has, the Pookie is this little brat dog, and rips up all her cushions and pees on her floor, on her rug, and does all this stuff, chews up her sandals. But then we have the feathers scene with all the feathers everywhere, and then Mom's coming with her new boyfriend. Did anybody pick up the analogy of that?
Sorry, but I
don't think I did.
What
What
exactly?
Things are getting messy in her life.
Oh,
yeah.
Not just that, but that was like an analogy to show that. Also with Katie Kyle, the nonstop talking, again, it was a cover-up, loud noise to build the discomfort that also led to the reprieve of the difference between the dance steps when she's dancing with the detective, where there is rhythm and there is rhyme and there is lyric and there is sense, as opposed to Katie talking loud nonsense, just building up discomfort. Anybody get those two things that I put in there?
No, I'll be honest with you. I missed that. And Katie following her to the bathroom and talking to her through the bathroom, really. I thought, oh God. Yeah, this is a
Yeah,
person you
yeah,
run from when you see them at a party.
yeah. Yeah, I was trying to show the difference between the senseless and the sensible. And also the point counterpoint between the love, the quote love between the sick love that Tara had for Riggs and the more sensitive, sweet love that's growing between Estine and Detective Dayton Wyatt. So I hope you got the counterpoints that I had
Yeah.
tried to put in there for that. What scenes were the suspense building scenes that you thought worked? Were there any suspense scenes that you?
Well, I think when she got locked in the shed,
Mhm.
that was pretty scary because
Yeah,
you weren't
Mm.
sure
right.
who was responsible and even afterwards you really were left wondering who is that and when are they going to come back or are they going to come back? So that I thought was rather suspenseful.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the fact she knew that was a man, and then you're thinking it was a woman. You're thinking, at that point in time, you're thinking it's, HB, but then you're like, but she was locked in by a man. So who is that? So that was good. So I thought them.
And in the first HB chapter, you don't know who the man is.
Right,
Right.
Yeah, that
Um,
was good.
so
right.
that you want to know who's this man that this woman's involved with, because that chapter comes as a surprise because it's pretty far into the book before you're introduced to this character. And so when you read that chapter, you're wondering, and you're especially wondering who the man is. And Riggs was clearly a flawed character, uh, because when you do realize that it's him, then you're I mean, that's the point at which you pretty much know that this had to be who the killer, this had to be the one who killed Joni. But then the suspense is how are they going to catch her?
But I kind of wanted to show for Riggs the slippery slope of his, having an affair, a one night stand, and what it led to. Um, so yeah, he was definitely flawed. Um, they all were. I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was hard to feel sorry for him, even,
Mhm.
because he was so mean after he, had the car accident. And in spite of the fact that it was done on purpose to him, and you
Mhm.
should feel sorry for him. It was hard to because he was very nasty, but also, a little deserving.
I think sometimes for people who've gone through something that they had part in it, and then it just slippery slope, it just goes down and down and down, it would make you angry.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
maybe at yourself, maybe at how it all happened, at others. But I think when somebody carries that much anger, it just spills out in different directions to different people without realizing who he is hurting. He's hurting the person who wants to help him,
Yeah.
basically. And Estine is showing, and she doesn't have to show her concern for him after the accident, but she does. Um, and still he is pushing her away. But I think part of that is his own anger at himself. At least was what I was hoping for.
Yeah, because I mean, there were plenty of times when he could have not, like once he ended it, he didn't have to keep seeing her. And he always went, when
Well,
she
I thought it was for a certain reason, but that's just maybe I read into it too much, possibly. But sometimes self-satisfaction, there might have been some guilt things, but
Yeah.
he also always satisfied himself.
Yes,
Right.
he does. He
Which
does.
is why it was hard to feel sorry for him.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Exactly.
I thought your characters were well written. I thought it definitely pointed to her, but it was interesting because we're so used to formulas. We're like, well, it's too obvious, so it can't be her. See, and then of course it was.
But not the way people expected it to be. Hopefully.
Right.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
'cause
It was
Blue
her, but
really-
it,
Blue seemed like she really wasn't gonna be it. She,
Mhm,
things pointed to her, but yet she didn't seem like that person.
yeah.
Mm.
Well, I thought there really was a sister.
Mhm.
I did. for a
That's
while.
what I thought, that it really was a sister. I didn't until the end realize that it was a somebody with multiple personality disorder.
That was an interesting twist there, that end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you did a good job on masking it, that Tara and Blue thing, by saying the COVID mask. Made perfect sense. You know, it really did. It made perfect sense that that's why nobody knew it was one person. You
Yeah,
know, and I thought that was good. I like that.
yeah, I
Also-
definitely thought there were two sisters.
Yeah. And then the neighbor, nobody in the neighborhood heard or saw anything.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what you thought of that, but I was trying to help this, lady across the street, Hazel, to, because I know I don't identify cars by make. I identify by color so often myself. So I took that from my
I
own.
thought that was
self.
very believable.
I have been, no, my husband has sat there and laughed at me while I tried to get in somebody else's car because it was a color parked next to where I parked.
I
So,
do. I can tell a Volkswagen Beetle,
that's
a
right.
sedan from an SUV. That's
Mhm,
about it.
yeah.
Well, don't you find that when my memory when I was younger is the cars looked very different from each other. I mean, Chevys did not look
Exactly.
like Fords.
Peter
Plymouth,
Baker was
like-
very different.
yeah, and now everybody's got the little minivan. They've got the, like the little thing, I don't know what they call it, that looks like and I'll go through a parking lot and think, okay, this one's an Audi, and look to see, but they all look the same to me.
Me too.
So yeah,
But-
I mean, I don't think it's just us.
Yeah. It's odd because my wife and I had that same conversation about a week ago. Because when I grew up, high school, graduated 65, and you knew the Fords from the Chevys and so on and so forth. Not anymore. Everything looks alike. And it's odd because we had that conversation. So now when I want to know what the car is, I look at the emblem on the
That's
hood
it.
or on the name on the side. Otherwise,
If you can find it.
yeah, it could be a one of a half a dozen
They
different.
used to have the names on them. They don't now.
Yeah.
Even the sports cars have borrowed designs from each other. So sometimes you look at the back of the car, you're not sure.
Yeah.
It's the same curvature and
The only two cars that I can count on knowing what they are without having to look is a Jeep because of that grille and the Mustang because of the taillights. They've kept those two things. They don't look like anything that they were before, but because of the grille on the Jeep and the taillights on the Mustang, I recognize it immediately. But otherwise, don't ask me, hey, what is that car going by? Shoot, I don't know. It could be one of 6 different kinds.
So there's a
Mhm.
device that can be used over and over again in our mysteries.
Yeah.
But it's true.
This is why witnesses are unreliable. We don't
No,
know.
I learned
one
that.
car
I
from
learned that a
another.
long time ago. Real quickly, when there was an accident at a cross street, I had 3 witnesses. One of them had him coming from the left, the other one had him coming from this side, the other one had him coming. You couldn't. That's not possible. And eventually, through skid marks and that, I could figure out who was where. But three witnesses standing on different corners saw different things. And so, I mean, that really hit home to me with Hazel. I mean, how's she going to know? You know, you can't rely on witnesses.
Mhm.
You know.
You know, and it's true. I don't know why, but maybe with this book in particular, when it struck me that, you know, you could see something happen, but because you're not, it's just an everyday occurrence, and then all of a sudden something different happens, but you're not expecting to be a witness. You know, you're not thinking like, oh, I should be observant when something happens. So you really, you know, your memory of what happened before the defining moment is shaky because you really weren't focused or concentrating on something because you weren't expecting that something was going to happen. So I thought that was, yeah, it's hard to remember clearly something before the moment of the
Well,
defining moment.
with our psyche trying to be sane, we try to make sense of what is senseless sometimes, or we try to make sense of something that we saw that maybe was way out there unusual, but we want to tie it down to something that is normal. And so we as human beings tend to do that kind of thing. Um, and that's why if you see something and then you talk to somebody else who saw it, you start to collaborate what you think you saw.
Yeah.
And so you don't remember it correctly. You
Yeah.
remember it the way the other person said it. Oh, they must be right, because I can't make sense of this.
The other thing that concerns me is electric cars. You know, I'm out walking with the dog and one comes up behind us, and I hope Toby notices because I don't. I'm not aware that's even there.
Yeah.
They just
There's no
sneak
engine
up.
noise.
They're
You know,
quiet.
you just get a little bit of a whine of it going by the electric motor. You don't have the
Yeah.
engine noise.
Oh, wow.
Interesting. Well, who's going to have an electric car in their next murder mystery?
You know?
Something to think about.
Well, we have to change with the times. For example, phones. I was a ventriloquist for many years, and we made the sound effect of the dial tone way back when I started. Well, that
Yes.
doesn't work today,
Yeah.
and then we go through this, that, and the other thing, and you have to change with the time. So the same way with, I guess, with cars or anything. But it would be fun to have an electric car in there. Alice, you'll have to do that.
Well, I keep thinking I'm going to write some more, but so far it's not working out.
I wrote a short story where they were in a Tesla that got published, and they were out in Arizona, and I made it so that they thought they could stop and get power, but then the power plant wasn't open yet, so they were stranded in the desert. That was my because
Oh.
yeah, looking
Does
for
anyone
power.
does anyone watch NCIS?
Mhm.
Because the episode on Tuesday, I taped them and I watched it last night, and it was about I don't know that it was necessarily an electric car, but cars being taken over and being driven from a computer. You know, the computer takes over. And it said something like, you know, any car with a, see, I don't remember these things. I'll have to go back and see if I can watch it again. But something about it, it's any car with a certain kind of computer access can be taken over by somebody else. And that what they would do is take over the controls of the car and drive it where they wanted and then murder the victims in a remote location. It was kind of interesting. I don't know if it was necessarily an electric car though.
Do you remember when that used to be a sci-fi thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, exactly. And it's a very real thing now. Oof.
Yeah.
You know, you get little things like that. Like I read the Stephen King book, Mr. Mercedes,
Uh-huh.
and the crate. I don't know if anybody read that.
Yeah.
But you remember that he took over the computer through the camera there? That made me so paranoid. I close that little flap and unplug it unless I'm going to be using it. You know, because he took it over and he did all kinds of stuff with it.
Yeah.
And it's, you know,
Yeah.
it's entirely possible these days. Maybe when Stephen King wrote it, it really wasn't because it was a number of years ago. But now, yes, that can be done. That can
Well,
be done.
listen to this. Twice I almost got scammed on computers. And you know, I was on the phone with somebody because I think it might have been about it wasn't just about a purchase that I had made, because I know that those are, I recognize those immediately because I know what I buy and I know what I, you know, and I know that
Right.
these are scams. But it was something else like that. And I was on the phone and it did have to do with Microsoft. And I had just done something with Microsoft. I don't know whether I bought something or I renewed my subscription. And that's what the email was about. And so I'm talking to the person on the phone, and then something they said made me think, wait a minute, this doesn't sound right. And I quickly looked at the email address, and it was not Microsoft.com. I said,
Yeah.
wait a minute, this is a scam. They disconnected immediately. Not only did they disconnect immediately, the email that they had sent me disappeared from my phone.
Mhm. Yeah, we had the same thing.
How does
My husband had the
that
same.
happen?
Yeah,
I mean,
unbelievable.
they have the ability to take something that's in your email and move it out and pull it out. Uh,
Yeah.
that's very
Well,
scary to me. So yeah,
I had the same thing where I got when I knew it was a scam. You know,
Mhm.
because like you said, I always check the email address of the sender, and it's never the company that it pretends to be. So I didn't respond to it. I didn't click on it. You know, I didn't do anything. I just marked it as spam, and I lost my folder on the desktop, my John folder that had all my stuff in it, all my photos, everything gone,
Ah,
oh wow,
gone. I
wow.
lost half of the manuscript I was writing. I lost about
Oh,
no.
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 $25,000. But good guys will take your computer and the hard drive from another one, which I always keep. When I get a new computer, I keep the old hard drives because then they downloaded that folder from the old one to the new one, and I was able to recover almost everything.
Oh,
Almost everything.
Yeah.
But how on earth I didn't do anything. I didn't press any buttons or nothing. I just read it, went up and marked it as spam, but that must have been a trigger.
yeah.
And they
Yeah.
took the most important file that I had.
But so in my instance, I figured like it's got to be somebody who's tapped into Microsoft or somebody who works at Microsoft that knows that I had recently had dealings with them. So I would be more likely to be scammed because I, you know, I had just done something with them.
Yeah. But you know, this is all good stuff to think about in future writing.
Yeah.
Yes,
You know, this is all stuff that
absolutely.
you could
Abs-
use.
Mm.
Terrifying. It's terrifying.
Anyway, I like the like I said, I mentioned before, I like the fact that Tara and Blue were the same person.
Mhm.
And they were what's the name? Estine and Callie were discussing that at the time they hear the shot, right? They're discussing that. Are you sure that's not her sister? Well, they still weren't sure.
Yeah.
So I think that played out. I think that played out really well.
I
And
did
then
too.
eventually, you know, page 2 in, you learned that they were the same person.
Mhm.
I thought
really
that was the
thought they
best
were two
twist.
separate people.
That was the best twist.
Mhm.
I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of twists in mysteries, you know, where you take them down a path and they say, I know who did it. My best friend did that. He said, I know who did it. I'm halfway through. And I told him, read the rest of the book. And he did. He called me up and said, I never saw that coming. And I never saw the Tara Blue thing coming. And I think that's great writing. You know, that really makes the book fun to read. So
Yeah, because when Callie arrives early to walk the dog and she hears the two sisters fighting,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
right?
Right.
And then she goes, but she didn't see any other car out there. And she said, oh, well, she must have Ubered, when she left.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
you really are still thinking at that point that it's two people, but there is a very plausible reason why, there weren't two cars
Yeah.
in the driveway because it's one person. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
right, John, in that when they both go to the funeral, I had to show that she could wear a mask and hide herself, hide her face, and wear the sunglasses. But yeah, this was her other side of her that
Right.
was taking
That
control.
was good. I like that.
At my door scratching. If you can hear them,
Before I
my
forget,
dogs are scratching at the door.
I wanted to tell you that I think you have some really good similes and metaphors. The one that comes to mind is she thought not Link,
Riggs.
Joni's and Riggs's death and accident were linked like a chain link fence or something.
Mhm.
You had some unusual ones and they were good. Well thought of.
Thank you. Well, I hate to end early, but that's all I've got. Now this
Well,
next,
keep writing. And I like
this-
I haven't read anything of yours before, but I'll start looking at the other books.
Why is
This-
I
it?
did enjoy, I did enjoy the book, and normally that's not my kind of a mystery. You know, I write the hardcore detectives and lots of shooting and stuff like that. But I really did enjoy the book. It
you
was
would be
good.
one of my people to ask questions of. I always have to go to the information officer to run things by me because I do not know a lot about procedures, but I know that people are people.
Mhm.
And they do things that might not be according to protocol, but they do things given certain opportunities or certain settings and certain situations because they're humanity. And that's why
Yeah.
you read about some officers that did certain things. And you say, why in the world would they have done that?
Well,
And I love, one of the things I love about a book, a good story, is when there is one clue that it was one thing, it was a hinge, and you could not have done it without this one clue. And the only example I can think of, that's my dog, sorry, is a woman goes up to, she's outside, they're outside party, she gets cold, it's at night, she decides to go upstairs to get her shawl, and she's found dead on the stairway, on the landing of the stairway. Well, the detective knows that sorry,
I can't hear him.
I can't hear the dog.
These dogs
I've got a 90 pounder sleeping behind me and a 60 pounder curled up with her. They're just quiet as mice.
As long as there are no deliveries, my 9-pounder
yeah.
will
Yes.
be quiet.
That's why I
Yeah.
think I have dogs in almost every one of my stories, because dogs are, they're just the way they react and the way they, and I love cats too. I've got a 30-pound cat I cat sit for, who makes my dogs toe the line when she's here. She's the boss. So, but anyway, but what was I going to tell you?
The dead woman on the staircase.
Yeah. So the detective knows that the woman did not go to get her shawl because she's not wearing the shawl. So he knows that she died there, not in the bedroom. So she was en route to get her shawl.
Okay.
So, I mean, little things like that I love in a story. I love that.
Interesting.
That's all I
Well,
got.
Judy, thank you very much for moderating. The books, your selections were great. We really enjoyed them. I know I did.
I did.
And
Very good.
our next quarter is going to be moderated by Ellis Fiddler.
Yay.
And
Yay for Ella.
I sent out an early email
I saw it, yeah.
Ellis has selected an archaeological theme. And the first book that we're going to read is, let me make sure I've got it correct, Sight Unseen, spelled S-I-T-E, by Dana Cameron. Now, Dana Cameron has written, this is the first book in her Emma Fielding series, which has been picked up on Hallmark. I don't know if any of you watch the Hallmark Mysteries, Movies and Mysteries channel.
What's this one?
There's more than one. I know I've
she's
seen
got
at least,
three,
yeah.
three of them.
I don't know if I've seen the third one, but I know I've seen two of them. And this is you're the first to hear this. Dana Cameron has agreed to join our mystery book club next month to talk about the book and her Hallmark experience. So we're very excited
Wonderful.
to that's a
Good.
major coup for Ellis. We're
Because there are
delighted.
some real differences between the book and the film, as you might expect.
That'll be great to that'll be great to talk about and to hear what she has to say about that. The second book is The Crossing Places by Ellie Griffiths. I don't know anything about that book, Ellis.
Oh, it's really good. It's different, and it's written in present first person. Well, no, third person. I can't even think of my tenses, but it's continuing. You know, she's running and I'm running. No, she's running along and sees this.
Present tense.
Yes, but it's just left me. Sorry. It's
Okay.
what happens when you get old.
Is
But-
the character's an archaeologist also?
Yeah, she's an archaeologist. And I think they're great. I have read all 22 of them.
Oh, wow.
And although I tried her other books and so far haven't been able to get into them.
Well, that's for me, like the next one. The third one is Elizabeth Peters' Crocodile on the Sandbank. And I read every one of those, and I was so sorry to see that come to an end. And one of when Elizabeth Peters, Barbara Mertz was her real name. That Elizabeth Peters, I think, was her one of her pen names. When she passed away, a friend finished a manuscript she had started, but it just wasn't the same. It was well done, but it just wasn't the same. But I adore this series. Elizabeth Peters, uh, uh, Amelia Peabody is the sleuth, and what a grand character she is. I think you'll love her. So that's what's coming up in the next quarter, and I hope that all of you can join us. I saw that some of you already registered, but I'll be sending the emails out again. But I'm really looking forward to hearing from Dana Cameron. It's always good to hear from somebody who made that step into film, which is a dream we all have, those of us with series, right? Wouldn't it be grand? So, anyone have any parting comments?
What
Denise?
can you say the name of the first book?
The name of the first book is Sight, spelled S-I-T-E, Unseen,
Okay.
by Dana Cameron.
Okay.
All right. Any parting comments? Well, I wish you all a wonderful holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah. And I think there are a few other holidays. I think they said there's something like 20 different religious holidays in this, from Thanksgiving to the New Year, and Happy New Year for sure. So, yeah,
You
I
too.
hope to see you all at our next, the first meeting in January.
Thank you.
Looking forward.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody.
Too.
Bye-bye.
Happy
Okay,
Thank
holiday.
you. Thank you. Thanks, Judy.
bye-bye.
I have a question, Sally.
Sure.
You had sent out a notice about the dues being due and this and that.
No, not me.
Oh, well, somebody did from upstate, because I'm not a member. I didn't know
You know
It-
what? Hold on while I make sure that I
I
stop
didn't know
recording.
if, see, I'm not a member of